Hi, this weekend I watched Juror #2, the most recent film by Clint Eastwood, whose directing career stretches back over 50 years. It's the story of a young man who, a recovering alcoholic and with a child on the way after a high-risk pregnancy, is called for jury duty. He reports somewhat reluctantly, but prepared to do his public service. But as the case starts to unfold and he hears the opening statements, he realizes he has a personal connection to the case. The accused is a ne'er-do-well, a former drug dealer, accused of murdering his girlfriend on a remote country road after arguing publicly in a local roadhouse. However, the juror knows that he was at the same roadhouse. It was the anniversary of his child's stillbirth, and he was very tempted to take a drink. He decided against it, but drove off and in the pouring rain hit what he thought was a deer. He now realizes that that was the young woman and that the accused is in fact innocent, so he has the dilemma. Does he allow a bad person to go to prison for a crime he didn't commit? Or does he destroy his own life in the pursuit of doing the right thing? Eastwood's back catalogue has a long history of stories of moral ambiguity, of right and wrong, and the colossal grey zone that exists between them. And this is very much in tune with that. And it's very much a classical movie. It's relaxed in its style and in its photography. It's absorbing. It's measured in its pace. There is a very subtle background score. It's very much a plot and character-led story, very much in tune with most of Eastwood's late films. That they have this slow, absorbing quality that's very much out of step, I think, with studio blockbuster style filmmaking. And I think that's a reason why Warner Brothers effectively buried the movie. They refused to give it a wide release in the US, deciding instead that it would go straight to its streaming service Max. It did get a wide release in the UK, where it was fairly successful, but it was effectively buried in the US by a studio that no longer understands anything that doesn't cost $250 million. It's a very good film. Nicholas Hoult is excellent in the lead role. There is a very storied supporting cast. You have Toni Collette as the prosecutor, who needs to have a guilty verdict to support her upcoming election. One of the other jurors is played by J.K. Simmons, as a former detective who starts to investigate the case himself, even though it's legal. And Kiefer Sutherland even has a large cameo or small supporting role as the main character's AA sponsor, and who becomes his lawyer and is thus the only person in whom he can confide about his terrible secret. The film explores the various avenues in which the story could go. What ways can our character try and influence the jury towards a not guilty verdict when they're all convinced that this guy clearly did it? How can he manipulate things? How can he push in different directions? What is he prepared to sacrifice himself? And what is he prepared to do to protect the life of someone who is clearly a bad guy, but who hasn't committed this terrible crime? It's a really engaging, absorbing, well-calibrated film, and it shows off Eastwood's tremendous skill and mastery of this medium. I've always been a big fan of him as a filmmaker. I think that sometimes his work can be a bit off kilter and a bit harder to take. Some of his public statements about politics are odd, but his films have always shown a very strong sense of there being conflict, there being difficulty between right and wrong. And even in this case, it's quite an apolitical film because it's showing that, yes, there are bad people on both sides of this argument and people doing bad things. And it's what people are willing to sacrifice to do the right thing, or how people are prepared to redress wrongs they've done, that drive the story. And that's what makes it interesting. And it goes back all the way to his early career, right back to The Man with No Name, a ruthless bandit and unrepentant murderer who is nevertheless not as bad as the villains in those movies. It's a very fine film. It's now available as a rental. It's highly recommended and one of the better films of the last year.